So we have a British speaker on the agenda. You know, we had a lot of Americans, Indians, so I said, let's get the British, since they colonized us once upon a time, right? And so Steve has been in the software industry, in the database industry, worked at companies like Sybase, and now he runs one of the hottest companies in the big data space called Actian. So please welcome Steve Shine.
Thank you, Emma. An introduction like that, colonization, I am sorry. Thank you very much, Emma. I was actually going to come up here and say some very kind words about you, but I'm just going to move on. No, seriously, for those of you that know Emma, he is a terrific individual, and I am super pleased that he gave me the opportunity to come here, and I am so impressed. It is astounding how much energy comes out of the people in this room, and over the last 2.5 days, the creativity that I've seen in this room. When Emma said, well, come along and tell them why, you know, there's an opportunity for them in big data. You know what, you guys are so far out there. There's so much creativity and enthusiasm that this is going to seem a little bit dry. I've been, for the last 2 days, looking at frankly, the sex and the sizzle of everything, all these new initiatives that are out there. I'm going to take you right down to the plumbing level and talk about how you actually power everything behind these new waves of technology that are coming along. And I'm going to present some questions to you because, you know, there are some people out there that say, you know, big data is the reserve of big companies. I'm going to try and challenge that. So if we can get started. First of all, we're a US company, so this means that everything I say is meaningless and you should ignore it. Actian, most of you won't have actually heard of Actian. I don't want to take you through the details. Very happy to explain to anyone. But we've been on a fascinating path. In 2007, we had a very traditional business. We had a huge installed base around the world of relational database, so transactional database customers. And then in about 2007, we saw a really significant change coming about, a real move towards more and more data. And it put a lot of pressure on us. And then I'm going to fast forward. We went through a period of years where we laid down a blueprint for what we saw as a fundamental change in what needed to happen for our part of the world, getting the tools for you to be able to manage data and extract value. All the different initiatives that you've seen over the last 2 days, it requires a different type of engine capability underneath it. So we set out about 3.5 years ago, and this year was a huge year for us. We effectively doubled the size of the company. We went out and we found some really, really innovative technology in some fantastic companies, pulled that together, doubled the size of the company, and a few months ago we launched the analytics value chain. It is a data platform. I'm going to try and give you a little bit of a feel around it. But the way I'm going to talk about it is our customers. I'm going to take you through some examples of customers. Here are some customers. We are blessed with this. And there are customers there that are huge, world-class customers, and there are tiny customers there with what I would call hypergrowth. And I'm going to try and give you a few examples of that as we go through. Here's the storyline I'd like to go through today. First of all, we coined the phrase age of data because, and I have heard a little bit about this, I believe it's only just starting. The change we are going to see is going to be truly enormous, and there are going to be a lot of changes. There are going to be lots of opportunity for winners, and there are going to be losers in this as we go through this change as well. And I'm really going to address the premise that a lot of people would say, you know, to really deal with the scale of big data that's out there, the budgets you need to have are unmanageable for most organizations, certainly for startups, okay? I'm going to challenge that. I'm going to demonstrate that that's absolutely not the truth, and that actually this is a green field. And I'm going to give you examples as well, and hopefully just give you a feel for what you can do with not only Actian, but there are plenty of other players out there that are really bringing a different platform for you to be able to take all that data and put your creativity on top of it and deliver the business value and innovation that we're seeing coming through. So first thing, what I'd like to do is just play you a little video that we have a great CTO. The guy is independently wealthy, and I constantly question, how is it that I can keep him in the company? And he just says to me, Steve, I'm like a kid in a sweet shop. I have all the technologies I need to go and deliver the next generation. He is our CTO. He's spent his whole life in data. He spends more than 50% of his time on the road, and he just lives with our customers. He's listening to what they're doing today, but he's also looking 3 to 5 years over the horizon. He's asking them what's coming down. He, 5 years ago, saw that Hadoop was going to be one of the fundamental foundational building blocks for the next generation of data management, and that it would cause havoc to the traditional legacy technology providers. That was 5 years ago, and most people would not have made that gamble. Mike actually took his whole company and moved all his technologies onto Hadoop, and then has brought that forwards. And Mike joined us this year as part of one of the acquisitions. So I'd like him to just introduce what we see as the age of data.
Hi everybody, my name is Mike Hoskins. I'm the CTO of Actian Corporation, and I'm here with you today for a couple minutes to talk about something I call the age of data. I think it is the single most important trend in the software industry. In fact, I think it's a trend that goes beyond the software industry and affects all of us, often called big data. Think of something that you do, a simple online buying transaction. You go to Amazon, you click, that's a classic business transaction in the sense that Walmart has sales. And we have filled up over the last 30 years data warehouses with all sorts of these kinds of transactions. But now, what's open to us in the age of data? That one business click might have been supported by dozens or hundreds of individual mouse clicks I did over the hours or days that it took me to research that product. Those are all in the click stream, in the weblog. Hundreds to one ratio between a business transaction and the supporting weblog transactions. Now, what's behind the weblog? With each click in the weblog, I have hundreds and hundreds of entries in my various system logs, in my application log, in my operating system Linux log, and my network logs, my firewall, and my router logs. That's the age of data. It's not just about business transactions. It's about the observations and interactions that make up internet and machine generated. The scale and complexity of this data dwarfs everything that's come before. It's not your father's Oldsmobile. This is not an incremental change from the past. We are living in a transition right now where we are instrumenting the universe. We're turning every dumb object into a smart object. The net result for individuals and humans is that they live in a vastly different world than they have before. Data is streaming at us from these operational systems. The timestamp digital data events are just flowing in a constant river out of various business systems and web systems and machine-generated systems. What does that mean? It means that we're going to obsolete instantly all static and rigid architecture. The kind of architecture that we've been running for 30 years, where we can stop the world at night and do our batch loads and give our users information that's 2 days, if we're lucky, 2 hours old, finished. Data is now born digitally and flows constantly. And if that's the new reality, and it is, then that invalidates much of what we think of as hardware and software infrastructure. So we have to think about new opportunities like we are at Actian. So if operational systems are instrumented in generating this massive scale and complexity of data, how do we handle this? Well, one of the things we do is pay attention to what we call analytic workloads. It's not just about operational systems anymore. It's about how do we capture those events at scale, and how do we collect those events and prepare them and analyze them and finally turn them into high-value information so that we can act on them. And the winners in the future are going to be those who understand that these architectures have changed, that static and rigid architectures of the last 30 years are obsolete. So what we need is a new generation of massively parallel, super scaling software that can run on top of and exploit the fantastic, massively parallel commodity hardware revolution that we all enjoy. And that software married to that hardware is going to allow us, if we have the right architectures, to build next generation analytic pipelines, capturing and analyzing and acting on that data at scale. How do we build those pipelines? What infrastructure do we use? Now that's the subject for another video.
Okay. By the way, if you sense his enthusiasm, that's because Mike thoroughly believes that. He went from start to finish. There are no second takes with Mike. He just sat there and did the whole thing from start to finish. And if you ever want to talk to someone who can talk to you about what's coming in the next 3, 5, 7 years, he's a great place to start. Very, very passionate about it. So we all know that data's out there. And believe me, Mike's comment around, things are going to have to change, it is very real. Okay? The architectures of today are not going to be able to deliver on the promise that is out there for big data. There is a very fundamental change coming about. And why do this? I mean, this chart here just tells you there will be winners and there will be losers. And it's not about us forecasting that. This is a McKinsey chart. They went out and they studied a lot of organizations, data-centric organizations, and they could see the difference between those that put data central to the strategy of their companies and those that, frankly, haven't got it. Right? And there is a very clear distinction in terms of the performance and how they drive things. So huge opportunity for the people in this room who really understand what that data is in the various different verticals or functional specializations you have to basically start to harness all that data and help you and your customers to become leaders in that space. Where's the problem, though? Why aren't more people doing this? And it really boils down to those factors that we all know, which is the scale, performance, complexity. Cost is actually the biggest one. If you've got enough money, you can go out there and you can invest in phenomenal legacy infrastructures that are going to cost you probably millions, if not tens of millions of dollars, and you'll be able to deliver on some of the promise of today's big data. You're going to have a struggle as you fast forward. So it's really looking at cost, and I would say the other factor here is time to value. If it takes you a year to deliver a project to be able to consume all this new data and then deliver the business outcomes, the business has already moved on. You're going to sorely disappoint your business if you're working on analytics and new applications and it takes you a year because the underlying plumbing takes a year to build. So that time to value is going to be extremely important. And then if you overlay the fact that companies are thinking about, well, I have half my data on premise, but I see more and more of it being digitally born in the cloud, then they're starting to say, where should I deal with this data? Should I deal with it on premise or should I be dealing with it in the cloud? A lot of different complexities there. And skills. There's a lot of new technologies out there that many of you are probably familiar with, but our customers are really struggling with. The whole Hadoop and NoSQL world. Actually, it's gone back to the code line. There's very little in the way of graphical programming capability. It's actually taken a little bit of a step back. And it's demanding a completely new set of skills. So these things are all challenges to people actually going from all that data to creating wide differentiation and value inside their business. And the legacy technologies are just not going to get there. It's not going to be an evolution. There actually has to be a revolution in terms of how you make that change. I want to give you a couple of examples. This is the big end. I said that, yes, large companies, these are our customers, and they are doing some amazing things. There are several of Wall Street's largest banks, investment banks, that actually run their whole risk platform on our technology. They've done it for the very simple reason that it's very much more advanced. It runs on commodity hardware. Okay, and it's at a fraction of the cost of what they used to. On the far-hand side, one of the largest internet companies in the world that does ad placement. So as you and I are on any of their web pages, they are tracking 80 terabytes of data in memory. And here's what they're doing. They're essentially saying, okay, as you're clicking through my websites, particularly if you're potentially buying, I'm tracking your buying habits. I'm tracking as you click through. That's not new. Okay, everybody knows that you can track the cookies and see that. What they're doing is they're saying, we have looked and we've run algorithms over history of people that actually do their what I call window shopping, and then you can actually track a person. Their clicks start to change, and you can tell when they're about to buy. And what this organization is doing is saying, right, I want to go to my advertisers at that point and say, this person in the next 12 hours will buy. Now you should be provisioning not just an ad, you should be provisioning a promotional ad because you've got a 12-hour window in which to win that business. So these are the big guys. This we know about. We've heard these stories, and as I said before, we've got some great customers that are doing it. But it is not just the premise of the large companies that are out there. And I'd like to introduce you to two companies that you've probably never heard of. The first is a gaming company, Iscool, and the second is an online dating company. Okay, the gaming company. I liken this to the growth rate of both these companies is phenomenal, by the way. So they're small companies, but they will be big companies that you know about very soon. The gaming company is actually doing what I call digital design. So they have online games. Every time someone presses a button, clicks, does a move on their game, they track everything. So imagine this. You're looking and you're trying to figure out, how do I improve the game? How do I make more people adopt this game? And if you imagine a flow of clicks going through from hundreds of thousands of people that are playing your games, and imagine concentrations of knots in the flow where something's not happening right, and you can see it, you can visualize that there is an issue with the game. People are not completing the game at this point. Those knots are areas of dissatisfaction. And what the designers are doing is they're visualizing and saying, what's the problem there? They're going in, redesign that part of the game, they flow it up, there's far greater adoption. I always thought of the games companies as having creative design, visual design people in there. There's digital design on this as well. And if you look at none of you know Badoo. I know none of you have ever been on online dating, but believe me, the data that is put in online dating is remarkable. There is no other place where people offer up more about their personal habits, likes, dislikes, than on online dating. So imagine the value to advertisers in that environment. You can really get down to what marketeers call whites of eyes. I know exactly what that person likes and dislikes. And so Badoo has actually grown from, in 2006 it started. I actually checked on the website this morning because the last time I checked, they had 120 million active users. They're now up to 195 million active users there. You only have to imagine how much data is being generated out there and how much opportunity for advertising. And again, the sophistication of the algorithms they're running there is truly spectacular. Both these companies start off, they do not have the high seven-figure budgets to be able to build out the infrastructure. They actually have had to start with Hadoop infrastructures. They're both customers of the Actian big data platform. They're really looking to say, how am I going to harness all that big data and actually turn it into value? More and more, you will see that people are actually starting to turn to the cloud as well. Amazon Web Services Redshift. Amazon Web Services Redshift is our par excel engine. Okay? The data warehouse that sits underneath Amazon Redshift is run by our MPP database. It's an extremely high-performance database, and it is really encouraging to see the adoption that's happening. They've gone from 0 in, I think it was January or February when they launched Redshift, to over 1,000 users, and there's some really creative uses of Redshift out there as well, and I've seen a lot of people here that are actually using it. And MicroStrategy, on the more traditional business end, their cloud offerings run on our technology as well, because one thing that's very important for us is to realize that although most big data takes place on-premise today, it is not always going to be like that. And so every part of our architecture, we make sure is ready for the cloud as we go forwards. And so to get the validation from Amazon was very encouraging for us. But I think the message here is, if you thought it was the premise of the big guys, it isn't. You can choose the cloud. You can actually do it on-premise, and you can do it at a price point now that is well within your reach and is actually vastly differentiated in terms of the outcomes, in terms of the business outcomes, in comparison to if you were to do that on a legacy environment. So what does it look like? Just very quickly, just so that you can get the picture. I mean, some things don't change, by the way. There's all the data on this side of the chart, and there's all the business outcomes on the far side of the chart. So these are the applications that you're developing, and you want to get to this data. Okay? That's the same as it's always been. That's the same as it's been since computing and programming was ever designed. And if you think about it, I need to connect to that data. I need to prepare it if I'm joining some data together. If it's my weather data and my point of sale data from all my retail outlets, and I want to see if there's a correlation. People have done that for years, and then I want to offer it up to some form of analytics capability. That's the same. What's different is what we talked about before. None of the technologies that you've got today are going to be able to cater for that scale, complexity, performance, cost, and time to value that you need in the new applications that you build. And so when we pull together these pieces of technology, all of them are software first. We don't run on proprietary hardware. We believe that actually part of our R&D should be Intel and AMD and all of the x86 chip manufacturers, because the performance in there is truly outstanding. And we want to leverage that all the way through. Hadoop is central to what we do. We think it's a fantastic architecture. It is going to enable huge scale for all of you to be able to build the applications and at a price point that previously was untouchable. And then what we've really worked on is how to bring some really smart software to get hold of that data and deliver it to the far end. So I just wanted to give you that picture, because if you're struggling out there and thinking, I'd love to do this and I'd love to be able to tap into all those new sources of data, you need to know that Actian and others out there are taking a radically different approach to it, and they really are thinking about how can we give you the tools. This is piping, as I said. Piping in its own right is of a certain value, and this is radical and will be extremely valuable to you, because if you don't have it, you can't get started. You can't deliver the promise of your creations. Okay? So I would just say this to you, that you're unconstrained. You can take advantage of all that data out there, and I just wish you the best of luck. And if you want to talk to us or any of the Actian people that are here, we're here for however long you need. All right. Thank you very much.
We just did a report at Sandhill, which, by the way, all of you can get this. We just did a Hadoop survey, and it's available on sandhill.com. And part of that survey, I want to have some questions for you about the survey. So the first thing is, for all the hype around big data, we found in the survey that most people, 44% of the respondents, they're both from the US and India and so forth, are really exploring Hadoop.
Yeah. So
what do you make of that? Because we've heard so much about big data, but nobody's really using it.
So it's true. We're out there with our customers. What you'll find most of them are doing is they are recognizing, they're seeing their competitors, they're seeing other industries that are doing some remarkable things with data. It's a new technology, and they're saying we need to start. They are starting to tap into different sources of data, and they're just capturing it. The whole Hadoop environment is a great way to capture data that, frankly, you could never have done before. What they are doing is they're starting to do some small projects around the edges and really trialing it. But I think everybody who is data-centric is realizing that we need to start down this path, because we're not going to be able to do it in the traditional manner we used to.
So the other thing is one of the things the report said was people are starting to look at lots of different data types, right? So it's not the classic relational. It's much, much more than that. What are some of your customers doing? What kind of interesting data types are they seeing?
It's the most exciting part of it, because if you're like me and you've grown up in the traditional IT world, it's always been a very structured, tabulated world. To see people, and I think it's interesting when people dive into machine web logs and this type of stuff, and I think that there's an enormous amount of value to tap from that. But we've got people that are coming through and they're starting to say, we like to look at sophistication around video and how we can use video and voice and some of the rich text-based social media feeds. I mean, there are some elements that are being done, but at the moment, they're sort of, I would call them niche science projects. What people want to do, though, is say, if I'm only sampling a little bit of this new data, my sort of accuracy is statistical. If I can sample all of that new type of data, then I go from stats to facts. Things become real. If I sample enough data, all of it, I'll actually get the right answers out of this, no matter what those different types are.
Questions from the audience? Go ahead.
Hi, this is Jagan here. With the data still growing, what is your CTO's vision in the next 3 to 5 years?
So with data still growing, what's the mission that we see? So we think that we are going to be constantly stretched. So Mike, the person that was on this video, his challenge is not to build what we have today. Okay, I remove him from that because I'm saying, Mike, you just have to look at the growth rate. It's going exponential. You can see it. If in the last 2 years there was more data than in the whole of mankind, then what's going to happen in the next 2 years? Okay, so we, from our perspective, from an R&D perspective, Mike is funded separately with an innovation lab where it's, what do you do next? Okay, what's the next thing after Hadoop and NoSQL and our technologies out there? Because I believe that people like the people in this room are just going to constantly place demands on us in terms of our underlying ability to be able to power the creativity. So, if I looked at it from a simple perspective, it's as simple as looking forwards. My goal is, Mike, what's the next reinvention that's out there? Because I do not believe that Hadoop is the end game. I think it's going to be a constant challenge for us as the underlying powerhouse for your creativity.
So another question coming back from the survey. Because of the hype, we found in the survey that 1/3 of the people who responded said Hadoop did not meet their expectations. So what can the industry do to improve the usage of Hadoop, educate people, the skills that are needed, and what are you doing as well within that space?
So we've seen the same thing, and some of the... First of all, I think we shouldn't read that as Hadoop is not a good technology, because it is out there and it is delivering remarkable transformations. However, the skill set part of this is actually one of the biggest things that we are seeing in customers. It is not easy to use. Some of these new technologies, they really haven't focused on the usability aspect. I mean, most of you who are coders out there now are used to really quite rich visual and highly productive tools for you to be able to develop what you want to develop. It is code line development, and it is, in some ways, it's fairly arcane. And so I think the vendor community and the open source community really has to work on that productivity. Part of what we've done is bring visual development in the way you bring data through that pipeline and add value. It should be very visual. I want to be able to tie to these data, bring it through, add, append, filter, reject certain data, analyze, and provide an output.
Right. Another question from the audience? Back there? Yeah, go ahead.
How is the Internet of Things going to affect the age of the data?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
How does the Internet of Things impact the age of data?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a fairly defining part of it. So I'll give you an example. We all know about GE, and GE has suddenly come out as an industrial stalwart and has said, we're all about data. And I must admit, I raised an eyebrow, first of all, and it was like, okay, why is that? GE is a customer of ours, and they're using some of our technology. And I got on a call with their lead of their Center of Excellence for Data, and I asked the question, I said, how does an industrial stalwart suddenly say that data is fundamental to your strategy? It's very simple. If you think about the Internet of Things, yes, it's your mobile phones, but think about instrumentation. Instrumentation, and the instrumentation that GE is doing, the number of sensors they are putting into all of their, for instance, their power turbines is remarkable. The amount of data that they are generating out of there is remarkable. So why is that important to GE? GE's got a $160 billion 10-year backlog of orders. Okay? They have effectively forward sold $160 billion worth of business. And their response was this. All that data coming out of all those devices and sensors is the difference between our ability to make money or lose money on that $160 billion order set. Because if we can predict the when to maintain and get that right so that we know exactly what's going on in all those machines and we never have downturn in those machines, it, for us, is the difference between ecstatic customers and a lot of profit or disastrous relationships and losses. And sensors are just a part of the Internet of Things. And I think it is and it will be the major contributor to the age of data.
Steve, thank you so much.
Thank you, Emma.
Appreciate it.